Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's really, really haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, the podcast. Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's really, really haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, the podcast. Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's really, really haunted, Hollywood's haunted, Hollywood's haunted.
All right, welcome to Hollywood's Haunted, the podcast, where we discuss everything from hauntings and murders to the evil underbelly of Tinseltown.
Yay.
Our hosts today are myself, Patrick Bean, and Tia Bean, our producer and co-host today. And then we have Jameson.
Hola.
Sweet.
Yay.
Live from Connecticut. He's actually 3 hours in the future. Jameson, did we beat COVID or anything? Did Trump leave? Since you know the future.
Still the same over here, man.
Damn it.
We're just
No.
we're just rejecting people from different states now. So
We were
Oh,
close.
yeah.
We were really, really close.
Are you gonna say? Doesn't that date the podcast?
I don't care about that.
You
Yeah,
don't care?
I'm fine.
Because we're not releasing this for like a month
Yeah,
or a
that's-
month and a half.
Hopefully, we're not there, and then people
Oh, okay.
can be like, "Oh, this will, it's fine," or not. I'll edit it out.
Okay. All
Here we
right.
go again. Welcome to Hollywood's Haunted, the podcast, where we discuss everything from hauntings and murders to the evil underbelly of Tinseltown. Our hosts today are Patrick, Tia, and Jameson.
Hey.
hi guys.
So yeah, last week we had some good stories and everything. But this week's theme is, if you haven't guessed it already, can you guess what it was? What's the theme of today?
Oh, I thought you were asking. If,
I'm asking, not rhetorical.
Oh, right, yeah. What would film? I guess. Horror.
I guess-
horror to film, like
Horror, no,
true stories to
curses
film?
in film
Okay, all right. Okay, yeah.
or something like that.
Curses in film.
Cool.
Okay,
Yes.
that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll go with that.
So yeah, Jameson, you're first up.
Great theme. I have a doozy of a theme for that. Goes off of the famous story of Amityville for
Ooh.
all of those horror fans out there. Amityville is a name that rings true to most ghost fans. Amityville is a small town in Long Island, about 30 miles away from New York City, give or take.
So it's a real place.
And what's that?
It's a real place.
It's a real place, yeah. Amityville is actually the name of the town that the haunting happened, and it's not the actual name of the house or the family that lived there or anything. Amityville is a small town in Long Island.
That would be a cool last name, though.
Yeah, I mean, a cool
John
last name or a
Amityville.
cool name for your house. Like, you named your house? Yeah, Amityville.
Well, like
That's true, yeah.
some people do name their houses. It's very weird.
Really?
It's kind of old fashioned,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I guess people name their cars, so it's really just a step up from that.
It's usually when they have like an estate or like a big house.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
when you have lots of money and you can name things because it's so
Yeah.
large.
And this mansion's name is Ryan.
When you're poor, you don't name your apartment Phil. You know,
Yeah.
it's like...
That's true, yeah.
But yeah, so real place, real story to some people, and it's been made into countless movies. Some say that it's been made over 20 times on film from different stories with the name Amityville in the title, or just stories about that specific house. So it definitely has quite the reputation. This has been in folklore, in American folklore, for about, I'd say, 40 years or so. And one of the gentlemen in it, the George Lutz, who actually lives in the house, says that that's the reason he feels that he is telling the truth, is because the story has lasted, and he feels that if it wasn't true, it would have gone away by now. So most people, again, have seen the story, know something about the story, know something about the house. And so because it's been covered so many times, I really tried to more dive into finding out what the, behind the scenes is, or maybe what made this house possibly into the having the entities or the demons inside it. So I dug a little bit deeper. For general history of those that don't know what Amityville is or have only heard about the name and that's it, on the night of November 13th, 1974, Ronald DeFeo. Now, Ronald DeFeo is the oldest of 5 siblings. He's living with his parents and his 4 other brothers and sisters in this house in Amityville. And at about 3:15 in the morning, he takes a rifle and slowly walks around to each bedroom, shooting his brothers, sisters, and parents in the back while they're sleeping.
Oh,
Now,
God.
all of the family members were discovered face down in their beds with a single shot to all of the siblings and 2 shots to each of the parents. But everyone was found face down. And apparently after he murdered the family, he showered and then went to work.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now, this is a little unclear. It was very difficult for me to find out what he did in between, but we definitely know that at 6:30 p.m. that same day, he went to a local bar and ran inside in a frantic and panicked look and screamed, "I think my parents have been shot." So he brings back some people from the bar. They go into the house. They do find the dead bodies and call the police. And as the police are questioning Ronald what happened, he basically his story starts to fall apart, and they quickly learn that he's responsible for these murders. He goes to trial, and he starts to basically come up with the argument that he's insane, that he's crazy, that he heard voices inside telling him to do these murders, and that it wasn't his fault. He also said other stories about how a mobster killed his father because his uncle was involved in the mob. He tried to pin it on that his sister was involved, and that he caught her and then had to murder her to shoot her to stop her from killing the rest of the family. So he spewed forth many a story. And the jury didn't believe him, and he was convicted on 6 counts of 25 years to life, consecutive convictions. So that's the main story. That's where the bad stuff started to happen. And about a year later, a nice family called the called the Lutzes, purchased the house, and they're able to purchase the house for way cheaper than it should be going for because of these murders. And because of this, they're able to afford this house. They move in. They have, I believe, 3 small children in the house with them, and then they have the 2 parents. Now, immediately things start going crazy, and if you read the book, you have all sorts, or see the movie, you definitely have all sorts of small things that grow from small to large. And after 28 days, the family decides that they've had enough, and they leave the house and everything in it and flee, and eventually sell the house and never return to it. So what happened in those 28 days has come under scrutiny, and through story and through film, the public has feasted on this story for the last 40 years or so. Almost going on 50 years now.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
what I wanted to do was find out why did this happen. A lot of people have their theories that the house was built on an Indian burial ground, that demons were in the house, that all of these things that you read in the book did happen. Of course, the film takes liberties, so a lot of what they said wasn't consistent. So some things that were in the book were not in the movie, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. So
So that led to a lot of people to feel that, maybe you are making these stories up and whatnot. But obviously we know that usually movies embellish. So that being said, let's go into the history of the house.
Ooh, yeah,
It was built in 1927 at 112 Ocean Drive. They have now since changed that address. It is now 108 Ocean Drive. One of the owners finally decided that they had enough of people gawking at them and staring at their house, so they completely changed the address and the look of the house.
I'm
So,
sure that totally worked, and nobody visits
Yeah.
the house anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, all right. But they've definitely changed it. I mean, the way it looks back then is completely different now. So there's no more really, other than the building itself, the frame is not the same, and that's about it. So,
Mhm.
so let's see here. So the family that originally built the house, they lived there for a long time, and they finally sold it to the DeFeos. They were a couple who were about 43 years old, and they had the 5 kids. They were very well respected in the neighborhood. They were very well known to be very loving of their children and very respectful of their kids. Just they would do anything for the children as it was heard. They even had a house on the front of the front of the house that said "High Hopes" on the front of the front of the house.
No, see, yeah, the house has a name, right? It was
Yeah,
called
they
High
have High
Hopes.
Hopes.
Yeah,
So- Whether that was a name for it or not, I don't know, but
yeah.
that was the sign that was on the front of the house when they were all murdered.
That's
so,
definitely not the name of this apartment.
pretty sad. The children were ranging in age from 9 to 18. Ronald himself was 23. And he was the oldest child, obviously. But a lot of people, his argument was that he basically murdered his parents because he said that his father was very abusive towards him. Then he came up with many excuses for this. So there's no right story for it because one minute it was the mob, and then it was his sister, then it was his dad was beating him. So, he changed his story constantly. He did ask about insurance money when they died after the murders, and so it was believed by the police that he may have done this for the insurance money itself.
Oh wow.
Which was about $1 million or so, but again, obviously, he wouldn't have any access to that once he was, convicted of the murders. The house itself, again, we're going back to the Indian burial ground. A lot of people said that the Shinnecock Indians had a burial ground on that area, and that where the area of the actual house was built was actually an outside, let's say, sanitarium, for lack of a better word. Basically, the rumor started that any Native American that was either mentally ill or sick or dying was basically put into this penned up area and left to die.
Oh my god.
Holy shit.
So therefore, there's that was the thinking, was that okay? So there's a lot of this negative energy, and then of course when they died, then they were buried in this Indian burial ground. All the research that I found is in contradiction to this. There is. First of all, it would have been the Massapequans, but not the Shinnecock Indians. They were not in that area. That was not native to that area.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they would have left their sick and dying and mentally ill Indians, fellow Native Americans, that would have never happened. They took care of their elderly. They were very respectful of that kind of thing and very loving. So that would have never have happened. There has been never any reports or findings of any kind of burial grounds, and the closest one was about 10 or 20 miles away. So that whole theory was debunked. A lot of, if you look at a lot of pop culture, the Indian burial ground is the setting for so many horror movies. Pet Cemetery,
Right.
The list goes on and on. So
They only move the
you've seen,
headstones.
The Exorcist. Sorry. What were you saying?
I was quoting Poltergeist.
Poltergeist, exactly.
It's
Well,
okay.
It was interesting when you brought up the burial grounds. I was definitely going to ask you at the end, like, well, where was there in any burial? And I was also like, is there an accurate way to really look all of that stuff up? But I guess there has some historical record.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, New York obviously is one of the older parts of the country. They've been around since the mid 1600s. So, records of any kind of burial ground being moved or being found or anything like that, they have all historical records for that stuff, especially with zoning issues and when you're building on things like that, you can't just go in there and do that. They definitely have laws against that and historical records to prove that. So
That's cool.
Whenever I looked it up, it was just all like, as they would say, poppycock. It's all BS, and there's no proof of anything about the Native Americans, any of that stuff. So yes, there was Native Americans living in that area. Yes, there was fishing and whatnot because the house sits right on the ocean. So it definitely would have been a spot for them to maybe possibly do farming and stuff, but that's about it. So
Interesting.
cross that off the list. All right,
So
let's take that off the list.
It's not an Indian burial ground.
Not an Indian burial ground. So now, again, the house was only built in the late 20s, so it's not like it's a colonial house. So there wouldn't be any ties or anything like that to any old war stories or massacres that happened in the area. So that was also ruled out. After the family moved out, after the 28 days, they were successful in selling the house, and not one family that has lived in the house since has ever reported any strange occurrences happening inside the house. The house was sold in April of 1977, and after that, that family just basically was like, we've never had any issues with people or any issues other than strange weirdos coming to our house to,
Take a
check
picture,
out our place.
Yeah.
So as far as that's concerned, basically from all the articles that I've read and that I can gather, it basically only the Lutzes, the family that moved in after the murders, they were the only ones who said and believed publicly that the house was haunted. Okay. So I guess what the story basically boils down to is, do you believe enough that does this family believe that these things were really happening to them, and did they really occur, or was it a complete hoax that they were trying to, either make money or get some kind of recognition or whatever?
Was there any record of them having profited from this story? You know what I mean? Like, did they own? I mean, I guess they might have owned the rights to sell to an author, or a film. You know what I mean?
Like, didn't?
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You can ask your question because I can answer it.
I was gonna say, didn't Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were like attached to this story, didn't they profit from it?
Okay, so most of the articles that I read, their name did not come up very often. They definitely had psychics come into the house. They had priests come in. But their name, actually, funny enough, did not pop up basically at all. It might have been a casual mention or whatever, but as far as them profiting, I didn't see any articles or anything attached to it. Now, we did talk about them possibly pulling the hoax on purpose. Now, the lawyer for Ronald DeFeo ended up getting together with the Lutz family, and when the day that the movie was released, he came out saying that it was indeed a hoax, and that himself and the Lutzes came up with the story over a few bottles of wine, as it was said.
Oh my God.
So the day that it was released, he was trying to trash it. Now, a lot of people noticed that that he was having money troubles with the Lutzes. So maybe he was trying to kind of damage their reputation to get back at them. But the Lutzes both took lie detector tests to prove that they were telling the truth, and they both passed. So it's kind of a he said, she said situation, and that's where it gets a little murky as to whether this story is true or not. Now, again, the things that were said in the book, cold spots in the house, the flies filling up an entire room, strange odors, invisible hands pushing you and yelling, "Get out," green slime coming out of the keyholes. These things, the lawyer came up with excuses as to why they got these ideas and just kind of embellished on them. And a lot of the things kind of maybe got blown out of proportion by the author. So let's say in real life, the screen door potentially was ripped off the hinges. In the book, it was the 40-pound front wooden door was blown off.
Oh, wow.
So, embellishments, things that possibly could have happened. Maybe a knife did fly across the room or fell onto the floor without it being in an easy spot to fall. But then it was, amped up in the book where, silver oars flying through the air. So it seems to me reading it that it really boils down to, if you want to believe this story, you can, because there's a lot of reasons why you should believe it. And then there's a heck of a lot of reasons why you should not believe it.
That's interesting.
So that's basically what I came up with in my research.
Crazy.
What do you feel? I feel like you don't believe it.
Well, no, I've read the book myself. I read the whole book, and I think I was expecting a little bit more stuff coming from it. I certainly believe that, because it makes me think to myself, this family, doesn't have a lot of money. They buy a house that they're extremely excited to get because they got a steal on it. And after 28 days, they leave everything and just immediately, like, they get rid of the house as quickly as they can. Something happened. You know, there's no reason why they would be making this up. You also asked about money from them. They made some money off of the book, but not a lot. They weren't making millions. They made a few thousand or whatever. And it really, that was kind of the end of it. They really didn't look, they would hold press conferences, but then, so they did strange things. Like, they would hold press conferences, and then they would be very reluctant to talk about what they called a press conference for, So it sent mixed messages to the public saying, are you guys looking for attention or not looking for attention? Because it seems like you want it, and then as soon as you get it, you're like, we don't want this attention. What are you doing? So they moved. They went to California. They basically just kind of went about their business and tried not to make a big deal out of it. They didn't really try to write more books about it, or really kind of jump on the tidal wave that was going along with this whole story. So I really think it's kind of one of those cases that if you want to believe it, then there's a lot of reasons why you should, and there's a lot of reasons why you should, and that's really tough.
It's crazy because it seems, according to the book and what they're saying, that there's like so much physical evidence that they're witnessing, and that's so few and far between in general. And I think, being someone that has belief in these types of things, it makes you want to even believe it more.
Right.
Yeah.
The son, the son still lives in New York, and a recent special just came out a few years ago, and he says that I remember everything that happened, and I still have nightmares to this day, and I know these things really did happen. So, when you're a kid, you can be, I don't want to say you can be manipulated, but you can be kind of led to believe certain things. So
100%.
Yeah.
But
then, like,
overactive imagination is real.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
People also say, though, that kids are more sensitive to that sort of thing as well.
True.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
So,
I do remember those times when I was a kid, when you see that coat rack type of thing, and when you're sort of in the dark, you imagine this thing, and then it starts to move and do these things, and you're like, like, nowadays you'd have to take some serious drugs to do what your childish mind can imagine, or at least when it comes to being scared.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, I was always afraid of things in my closet and, all that stuff. So your imagination as a little kid, especially when you have your parents telling you these things are happening.
Oh, yeah.
That's true, too.
That's true.
So, I don't know. I really don't get that. I never got that feeling from the book or from the articles and from the book and all that the parents were malicious in wanting these kids to be on board with this story, and we need to make money for the family, so you got to say these things. I didn't get that. The father owned a business. He seemed pretty, pretty stoic guy. Both the parents were remarried. So it looked like they were more about the family than they were about anything else. And that's really, they felt that whatever was going on in the house was affecting their family. And so they decided, we're not going to stand for this. We're leaving immediately. What those demons are in the house that either led Ron DeFeo to murdering his family. Did that carry over into the next family? Who knows,
Yeah,
but,
or do demons really even work like that? Could this just have
Yeah.
been a freak, not necessarily something with the house, but just something that happened?
Yeah, it's just a bad thing that happened. And again, no other family has had any issues. Nobody else has complained about anything. So it's like, that's a bit strange, but maybe these families didn't have children. I don't know. It's very odd to me that this is the one time that it happened for 28 days and then it never happened again.
I am curious what the house is listed for now.
Well,
it's going in the high 800,000s.
Oh.
All right.
Yeah,
so
I don't have that.
So it's back. So it's back up at least. It's not like.
Oh yeah, we're looking at close to $1 million. I mean, it's right on the water. It has a pool in the backyard, a boathouse. The boathouse is very prominent in the story. So if you read the story, then it's very prominent and as to weird things that were going on in the boathouse.
Right. That's right.
But yeah, so obviously there's no lack of stories and movies and books and television shows to go along with the Amityville story. So if you listeners out there want to do more research or just even have a good time hearing about a fun haunted house, check out the Amityville Horror, or as it's told, a quote-unquote true story.
Crazy. Yeah.
And there you go.
Indeed. Oh,
Wow,
man.
awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for the story.
Thanks for listening.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
So, Pat, you're next.
I'm doing the Exorcist film. Bum, 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 bum. Guttural screams will be inserted in the back. Oh, nice.
Oh,
that
nice.
Was a good one.
That was really good.
Never mind.
You scared our cat.
Editing out guttural screams.
I can taste the pea soup now.
Oh, yes. So, directed by William Friedkin, produced by William Peter Blatty, who is also the one that wrote it. He's also the one that wrote the novel. He actually did that intentionally. They wanted the rights to the book, and he said that he would only do it if he could write the screenplay as well, which is awesome because I feel like movies have such a better, or longevity, especially, but also just when you're connected to the book, so by the author to the film, like you're pretty well, understood that you're going to get a good cut of what actually was in the book.
Yeah.
Who's the Interview with the Vampire?
Yeah, and Rice wrote the screenplay.
That's
that
right.
is,
yeah.
That is a perfect film.
Such a great movie. Yeah, exactly. That's the next episode. Nothing to do with horror.
I'm just gonna think about
how much we love Lestat.
I'm just gonna think about Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise for a minute here. I'll be right back.
Insert steam. So the budget was $12 million, but in the box office it pulled in $441.3 million. So it did very well as a horror film, especially in the 70s. It is the first installment in the Exorcist film series, and it actually follows the demonic possession of a 12-year-old girl and her mother's attempt to rescue her through an exorcism conducted by two priests. So yeah, like I said, it was very, very popular. Got released to 24 theaters starting off, and audiences were all over it, waiting in super long lines. And it was very cold because it was released in December. So, to do that, they were, people were like, oh my God, you're waiting in the cold to see this woman walk backwards down the stairs. Which I'll tell you later, that was actually not put into the premiere.
I was going to say, that was cut from the original because they couldn't do it, right?
That's right, yeah. It was just, it was because of everybody had very, different physical reactions to the film, including fainting, vomiting, but they were mostly considered that because of the scenes where Linda Blair actually undergoes a realistic cerebral angiography. I don't know if you remember that scene where they're like
putting iodine on her neck and stuff.
They insert a needle into the middle of her neck, and all that blood comes out, and then they put the X-ray thing around her head, and it's like dun, 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 like it's an interesting scene, mostly because after watching a few documentaries, I found out that the director William Friedkin actually hired the staff to do it. There was no actors in that room.
So that was a real.
It was a real. Yeah. It wasn't a real angiography. They didn't perform all of that realistically.
Yeah.
But they, you know what I mean? Like they didn't actually X-ray her brain and stuff. But everything else, some people, it's rumored that the needle and stuff was real because they wanted to have like a realistic, all that.
I mean, it looks real.
It looks real, but there was no confirmation on that, but I'll get to it later. This director was not like all right in the head. But some directors aren't, but the art they produce turns out really well. You know what I mean?
Roman Polanski.
But there's just like directors do a lot of weird things to get. But yeah, we'll definitely get to that a little bit later. But yeah, they were saying people were freaking out because of the cerebral angiography, and also, of course, the crazy scene where she masturbates with a crucifix.
Classic.
Right. Yeah, that one didn't get edited out.
What kid hasn't done that though? I mean, let's be honest.
I think that's.
I
how
think you need to tell us. No, don't tell us.
Don't tell us.
Be careful what you wish for, Tia.
Oh, God.
He is on the East Coast now. It gets crazy over there.
Oh, God.
There were also reports of heart attacks, miscarriages as well. Yeah, during watching of the film. But if you think about it, I mean, the first time I watched this, which was, I don't know, 2000 something, because, I'm much younger towards this crowd that originally watched it. Like, they weren't prepared for a horror film like this, like most horror films out there where some of them were graphic, but they weren't as well done, so it didn't really pull you into this. You know what I mean? Like it was
a lot more believable and realistic.
Straight up, yeah. Like most of they were graphic stuff out there, but that was like slasher stuff, and I guess they had really graphic stuff, but that would be like rated X type of stuff. That wouldn't be played in a film where people are bringing sometimes their kids, and that actually became a big issue because many children were seen going to the film, so they actually increased the ratings they actually gave it an R when they were trying to get it as an X. They were trying to push for an X because they wanted to get kids to not be allowed, period. A few cities even tried to ban the film outright to prevent children from seeing it, and some obscenity concerns actually kept the film from a home video release in the UK, and that was until 1999.
Oh wow!
That's like 20 years after the film, and you're still like, you can't watch this at home. You'll get a crucifix and you'll just go to town.
Yeah, right.
But a lot of people thought it was a way of kind of glorifying Roman Catholicism, because of in the original story that this is based on, which I'll get into in a little bit. It was actually said that only a Catholic could perform an exorcism, so it was kind of like I don't know. Catholics were like the Avengers or something.
Save us, Jesus!
But it was really well received, and it actually became the first horror film ever to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. It didn't win. The only horror film to ever win Best Picture was Silence of the Lambs, and that's kind of, some people say it's like a crime thriller, not exactly a horror film, but watch that movie and don't be scared.
Like Silence of the Lambs.
You know what I mean? Like Silence of the Lambs, that's a horror film.
I think Exorcist is more scary, but
I think Exorcist is definitely scarier for sure. But they're both horror films,
Yeah.
Red Dragon and Hannibal, the ones that came afterwards, those aren't exactly horror films. But Silence of the Lambs, definitely a horror film. But on that point, I kind of wanted to look up to see what other horror films, because horror films are very commonly neglected from
the Oscars,
just because they're graphic.
Horror films and people of color.
Jesus, right? Yeah. So the other ones that got nominated but didn't win throughout history: Jaws, which you could say isn't a horror film. Sixth Sense actually got nominated. Black Swan got nominated. And then, does anybody know the last one? It's pretty recent.
Get Out.
Nice, Get Out.
Very good.
You knew it. Get Out. Yes, it was that one. I don't know. What won that year? I wonder. Get Out.
Get Out won for best screenplay.
Oh, it did. Oh,
But what won that year? I know this was. That was that whole.
Was that Moonlight?
Moonlight.
Yes,
That was the
you're
whole La
right.
La Land Moonlight debacle.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but he got a best original screenplay credit, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what he was saying. Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't remember that, but that's at least he got that, because that was a brilliant film. Horror films are awesome. But yeah, so the Exorcist novel, and the film is based on the novel, but the novel is based on the exorcism of Roland Doe, who is an actual person. They also called him Robbie Mannheim or Roe. But there was. It's kind of it reminds me of the Amityville story. You know, there are definitely lots of belief on both sides of it. There's a lot of belief in the skeptic side of it, but there's definitely a lot of belief in the fact that it did happen. Most people think that because the novel was so inspired by the story that, you know, he actually went and read the diary that the priest wrote during the exorcism, and that's where supposedly a lot of the things pulled from the novel and the film were actually pulled straight from the diary. Whether or not those things actually happened, you know, there is almost little to no record, which I'll get into in a second. But the things that they did say happening were all things that were found inside the film. Furniture moving, things floating. There was, he actually supposedly, during the first exorcism, the Roland Doe took a bed spring from out of the mattress and then slashed the priest's arm with it, which isn't necessarily, you know, out of this world, but, you know, this was a 14-year-old boy, which the movie is a 12-year-old girl. I don't know why he wanted to make that switch, or if it was just to kind of distance itself from the story a little bit more. But so they had this first sort of exorcism with the priest, and like I said, they met originally with their Lutheran priest, and the Lutheran priest met the kid and was like, "We gotta call a Catholic priest, you know, like they're the demon busters, you know." So like
our God can't handle this,
right? That was like there's so many references to that when I looked this up. It was kind of interesting. But it's also kind of freaky when you think about it, because Catholics treat it kind of seriously. At first it was, I mean, they treat it serious enough to have a whole branch of the church dedicated to it, you know.
Sure.
Which is really, it's weird, you know, but also if you look at religion in other aspects, you're already worshiping an invisible person. So what's one more branch? You know? But that's, you know, to the skeptic's point of view.
He says this as he's wearing a Baphomet shirt.
Right, yeah, exactly. But yeah, so like I said, they did one exorcism, and then they conducted the Catholics, and then they did an interview sort of. Then they conducted the Catholic priest. They brought in a priest specifically for the exorcism, and they performed two different exorcisms. The first one was conducted at Georgetown University Hospital. And supposedly I'm going to say supposedly a lot because none of this is actually documented. It's all just documented in the diary. But supposedly he closed down this whole like wing of the hospital, and he brought in like different people. It was supposedly witnessed by over 40 people. That things were floating around, the shaking of the bed, the flying objects. And then the last exorcism that was held, there was, that one was the one that had more people. The first one, there was like 15. The last one they actually had, they said over 40 people. And then that's where the guttural voice came out, and supposedly one of the other priests that was brought in said he saw marks on the teenager's body, that said, you know, hell and evil and all this other stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, something the devil.
That's branding, copyright branding right there. You're not a.
The devil was.
You can get sued over that stuff.
He couldn't find a public school bathroom, so he found this kid to write hell on. But yeah, like I said, a lot of it was not. There's almost no record of any of it actually happening besides the diary. It was one of 3 exorcisms that had been sanctioned by the Catholic Church in the United States at that time. So this is the 3rd exorcism ever to be held in the United States through the Catholic Church, which also kind of lends to maybe this wasn't, you know, maybe it was just, you know, a kid acting out. So later analysis by several different skeptics of the paranormal concluded that Doe was likely mentally ill, and he was acting out due to, I mean, a lot of different things we didn't know of, especially back then. That we treat nowadays, autism, different things of that develop schizophrenia. Yeah, we didn't even know how to deal with that at that time.
That kind of came up in the Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is a true story as well.
That's true. Yeah,
they talked about that it was possibly just a mental illness.
Mm-hmm. That's
which
crazy.
Is terrible because she ended up dying from neglect, basically.
They basically starved her.
Yeah.
But it was because,
I think she died of dehydration, which is
which is
horrible.
A long time.
But there are mental illnesses where you won't drink water. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Or just, or schizophrenia in general, where you just, nothing makes sense, to you. Yeah. So, it was, they said he was probably mentally ill. And even the words that were carved on his skin looked like they could have been done by himself. And none of the words appeared in front of anybody. They were just seen, like they took off his shirt to do the exorcism and it was on his body and they freaked out, But, the words didn't, magically appear like they usually do in a film. So like I said, also, in order to do the film, Friedkin was allowed access to both of the diaries of the priests that were involved. And he also had notes and diaries from different doctors and nurses. And they discussed all of the events with about Doe in great detail. Even he interviewed his aunt. And she supposedly saw it as well. She was there. He also mentioned specifically that he does not believe that the head spinning occurred. That was definitely added,
Just for the movie.
or at least he thinks he. But no, it was written down.
Oh, crazy.
The head spinning was written down in the diaries. And that's another thing.
So supposedly
two separate diaries were having kind of matching stories, sort of. Whether or not it was, someone pushing someone to believe differently.
Or conspiring together.
Conspiring together, yeah. And Friedkin is actually secular. He's, despite coming from a Jewish family, so there's no, my religion is better than yours type of push for this film, He
has no agenda with it.
There you go, thank you, yeah. No, I like my religion's better. Yeah, that one's definitely more professional.
And then Buddhism saved the day.
Oh, man.
Hilarious.
All three of us are going to hell, by the way.
Oh, totally. After this one,
And when we get there, we'll find out that it turns out the Mormons were right.
Right, yeah.
Oh, God.
And we're going to meet a lot of the people we talked shit about. So, just some interesting tidbits before I get into some of the weird stuff. The casting. I just rewatched the film, of course, kind of had to, and was just kind of in awe of the movie. The actors are so good. And I originally thought, first time watching it, oh, this was a horror film. No one did horror, so they just kind of got the actors they could, and they were just turned out to be great. But apparently it was much more thought out than that. They actually went through several different rounds of casting. And Stacy Keach, do you guys know who that is?
Sure. Sergeant Stadenko.
Yeah, I think. Did you ever watch Titus? I think he was his dad in that show, too.
He's the police officer from the Cheech and Chong movies.
That's
wow.
There you go. That's a good one. There you go, listeners.
I only exclusively watch princess movies, so.
Yeah, Stacy Keach would not be in a princess movie. But he was actually signed on already to play Father Karras, who is basically the main role, which was weird because eventually they went on to cast someone else, but they immediately signed him on and then just kept auditioning people. The studio actually wanted Marlon Brando for the role of Lancaster Marin.
Oh, I love
Father
Marlon
Marin.
Brando, but he
That would have been horrible.
and he would have derailed the whole
Oh my
thing.
God.
Because like later in, like he always was like improving things and wearing waistbands on his head and stuff like
Right,
that.
yeah.
You know,
Uh,
like which was great for some of the things that he did, but this is like such a delicate.
and a serious thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not to say his other films weren't serious, but yeah.
Yeah, he brought a certain ham to his roles later in life.
Friedkin, the director, immediately vetoed this by stating it would become, in quotes, a Brando movie.
Yeah,
There you
so
go.
that's true though.
So
Which is basically
so
what
he
we
saw
all
it.
just said.
He knew.
Yeah. Basically, he knew. Yeah. Jack Nicholson was also up for the part of Karras, Father Karras, before Stacy Keach was hired, and he was actually hired by Peter Blatty. So the person that wrote it, was like, I want him for sure.
He saw The Shining and knew he was going to be good, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. According to William Friedkin, Paul Newman also wanted to portray Karras, but Paul Newman, no. I mean, Paul Newman's great, yeah.
He would have been too cool for the role.
That's true, yeah.
Huh.
May he rest in peace. Is he dead?
Yes.
I don't.
Edit.
But his pasta sauce lives on.
That's right, yeah. I think I have some of his salad dressing or something around here. William Friedkin also first approached Audrey Hepburn, but she said she would only do it if it was shot in Rome because that's where she was living with her husband. She was living with her husband at the time. So no one wanted to move the entire film to Italy because of the amount of money that would. But apparently they looked through it though, and they were like, we the language barrier, we'd have to translate because they really wanted Audrey Hepburn. But yeah, of course they weren't going to do that. They also looked to Anne Bancroft, but she was pregnant, so couldn't throw her around, I guess. And then the last one, but not least, Jane Fonda. She actually turned it down and said, in quotes, it is a piece of capitalist rip-off bullshit. So she was a huge fan.
I would have loved Jane Fonda. I think she would have been great, but that sounds exactly like Jane Fonda to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially,
but she's a good actor, so
yeah.
she wouldn't have expressed that.
Yeah, she would have been good, and the character's so much like her. And anyways,
right,
it's fine. That's fine. It's a great movie.
Also great.
Let it go, Tia.
Right,
I know.
yeah. Don't worry, Tia. Next one's for you. Peter Blatty also suggested his friend Shirley MacLaine for the part. Yeah.
I love Shirley MacLaine.
She's too snarky and sarcastic, though. I don't know if that would. Nah, she would have rocked it. I think she would have.
Can't think of her being in a horror movie or like a very serious role.
Serious role, yeah.
Well, I'm sure it exists.
I'm sure it exists, yeah.
I just am uneducated.
Right.
You're not supposed to say that during a podcast.
Yeah, right.
But apparently, he was hesitant to cast her given her lead role in another possession film called The Possession of Joel Delaney 2 years before.
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird because reading this, I kind of expected The Exorcism or The Exorcist to be kind of the first of exorcism movies.
Yeah.
Because it was.
Yeah.
That seems. I mean, but I guess 70s isn't as old as I think it is.
I've never seen that. I'm gonna watch that. I love Shirley MacLaine.
Yeah, right. I would love to see her. Yeah, like in a serious horror role. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna watch that and get back to you in the next episode. But eventually, Friedkin went and saw Jason Miller in a show that he was doing. But yeah, he had never done any film at all. He had just done stage plays. And Friedkin saw him and was like, "Oh, he has this super dark look, but he's like really, really good." In quotes, dark, good looks, haunted eyes, quiet intensity, and low, compassionate voice. And he loved him so much that he made the studio buy out Stacy Keach's contract. Because you had already cast somebody, like a lot of people were like, "No, like I'm in the movie." You casted me.
Yeah.
But yeah, they bought it out, and I think that was a good choice. Stacy Keach, I think, would have been kind of strange in that. Also, another strange choice was Denise Nickerson, who they wanted to play Linda Blair. And if you don't recognize that
Or
name,
Reagan.
maybe you'll recognize. Playing Reagan, not Linda Blair. Yeah. It was a very deep movie. There was actors for actors for actors. No, Denise Nickerson. Yeah, she was going to play Reagan. If you don't recognize that name, she was probably better recognized as Violet Beauregard from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, okay.
Which is so
Violet,
funny.
you're turning violet.
Right.
Violet should have gotten the trip in the elevator. I'm sorry, she should have won. She was the most determined.
I thought she was the one that's like, I want to go tonight.
That's Veruca Salt.
Ah, okay.
Get with it.
I know, yeah. I only know horror.
Yeah, the other girl turned into a blueberry.
Yeah. But she knew her candy. She was dedicated. She was just, snarky one time, but Willy Wonka was snarky the entire time, so.
You're saying it was rigged?
Totally.
It was rigged. I knew
Totally.
it.
Also, Grandpa is not a good person. Like, he's bedridden, but all of a sudden, when it suits him, he jumps out of the bed and can do a whole dance and song.
Grandpa Joe.
I digress.
So the reason Peter Blatty insisted on having Friedkin direct it was because William Friedkin actually directed The French Connection. Brilliant. Have you guys seen French Connection?
I have.
You have. Brilliant film. It's a really, really cool film. But the shooting was really why it was cool. It was one of the best chase scenes ever. But he thought it had a very realistic approach to it, so he's like, all right, let's do this. And I guess unfortunately, there was a lot of weird stuff that happened around the set, but most of it was to kind of make it real. There was no intention of trying to make the set feel haunted or something like that. Most of it was because they were just working really, really hard doing this film. Mm-hmm. The shooting schedule was supposed to be 105 days, but it went way over 200.
Wow.
And that was just the shooting. Then you have your editing, then you have your dubbing and stuff like that. You got to go back and do your
mixing and all that.
ASR and it was a kind of a painful shoot, especially for Linda Blair, who was only 12 at the time. A lot of people complain, or that her and Ellen Burstyn, who played the woman in the lead, she was yanked violently around in the harnesses. They both complained of back injuries, and there was even painful screams that they were, erupting with were actually still put in the film, and those were them actually being injured. Almost all of the ones where they're actually injured are put in the film because they wanted it to be real. Which I always thought, I wonder if there's like a contract for that for actors nowadays, like if I get actually injured, that's not going in the cut, because I'd be kind of pissed. Ellen Burstyn actually landing on her coccyx broke it when a stuntman was pulling her down. Was basically when Reagan slaps her for the first time and she falls to the floor. They actually pulled her down to the floor because she wasn't falling fast enough. And the director, I was watching that documentary, and the special effects coordinator was not a.
He's like malicious.
He did not give a shit. He did not care about the actors at all. Him and William Friedkin, the director, were definitely on the same page. Which to him, he thought, hey, I'm doing a good job. Hey, I'm going to make sure that they get get whatever the director wants. But whatever the director wanted was hurting some of these actors. So the one of the interesting sequences that happened was O'Malley is he tells William Friedkin that he trusts him, because Friedkin's like, he comes up to him in the middle of the scene and he's like, do you trust me? Do you trust me? And he's like, yeah, I trust you. What do you want? You know, he's like trying to do this really deep scene, and he slaps him across the face, and then he's like, go, okay, you know, go. And then they start filming.
Oh, it's the scene where he's giving the last rites.
Exactly, yeah.
And his hands are shaking.
And his hands start shaking in the film, and when you see it in the film, you're like, oh my God, that's so brilliant, and he's acting so well. But he just got slapped in the face and is kind of thinking, what the hell just happened? But then translates it right into the film. So like I said, most of these were just to get reactions. He would also stash guns around the set, which I've heard of other directors doing. I can't think of one specifically offhand, but yeah, he stashed several different guns around the set with blanks, but he would fire them just to, you know, get a good take. And there was also, like I said, a lot of the special effects things were purposely manipulated or nudged in different ways to elicit different responses from the actors, because they would be expecting it to go one way and it wouldn't happen that way. Like the pea soup scene, that was actually supposed to hit him right in the chest, and he thought like it was literally like him thinking it was going to be funny to make it, you know, right in his face, and it would be really disgusting, and it very much was. I think if it hit him in the chest, it would have been gross, but you kind of would have been like, oh,
yeah,
at least it didn't get in your mouth.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of people complained of the cold, because of once she became this powerful demon, that's when you started to notice that her breath, you know, you could see her breath, and then I think it's like a good hour left in the film where everybody's breath can be seen.
And there's no CGI in
There's
the 70s.
no CGI, yeah.
So they just...
they literally built that set into... They built a freezer for the set, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the whole set is inside of a refrigerator. And they got it down to, I think it was 20 degrees at times, because they had to bring in lights, which would heat up the set. So they would bring in the lights. Linda would come in wearing a fucking nightgown, and they would shoot what they could for like 2.5, 3 minutes, and then everybody would have to leave to let it cool down again. Yeah, which is insane. Also, the steps where he falls on the end were built to be extended so that those stairs weren't that long. They're actually 2 sets of stairs that they just kind of combined together. And the stuntman actually, or the stunt crew actually built steps on top of the steps, basically with a rubber padding. So when the stuntman falls down, you know, he can just kind of bounce all over the place. And I just thought it was really interesting that Georgetown University, where they were shooting the angiopathy or angioplasty. Damn it, I can't. Angiograph.
Whatever you just said earlier.
Yeah, the angiograph. The Georgetown University students were actually across the way from the stairs, and they kept seeing, you know, them shoot this scene of the stuntman falling over and over and over. So they started charging people $5 to watch the stunt from the rooftops. I guess in the hopes that it would go wrong, I guess. But yeah, that was just some like interesting tidbits. But now we'll get to the good stuff. So a lot of people complained of weird stuff happening on the sets. But I personally think that, you know, most of it was just the asshole of a director and stunt coordinator, or, you know, special effects coordinator that kind of just wanted this movie to be good, I guess.
Put everybody,
you know?
on edge.
Yeah.
And, you know, push the boundaries.
And it definitely, I don't know, who's to say, you know, like you have, I'm trying to think of who's the nicest director. Who's probably the nicest director? Fred Savage. You direct The Exorcist. Would it have been the same?
Yeah.
Probably not. But also,
no offense to Fred Savage, but you're also great.
The death. That's why we're all here. That's why you're here. Hello, listener. We saw you. from across the way.
That's the real reason anyone comes to this, is to hear about death.
Exactly. And yes, like Tia mentioned, there was some death. Actors Jack McGowan and Vasilik Malyaros actually both died while the film was in post-production, which, God, that sucks. That reminds me of Sam Warner not being able to see the theater open.
Yeah.
After, because they put in like a couple years, out of their life to make the film, and then don't even get to see it made. But also what makes their death strange is that both of their characters died in the movie. So a lot of people think that that's one of the curses of The Exorcist, kind of like when somebody plays Jesus or Superman, I think is another one.
Oh yeah,
of
no,
those.
that Superman thing.
Yeah.
We should definitely do that on one. I was thinking about that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Although I think the guy who Brandon something, he's still doing fine.
The most recent Superman. Yeah.
And Henry Cavill, yeah, he's doing great.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, we should do something on that.
Right, yeah. Other deaths that occurred during the film was actually Linda Blair's grandfather passed away during the filming, and also Max von Sydow's brother actually died on his first day of shooting. Which, God, that's gotta suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, while filming, Jason Miller, who we found out recently was playing Father Karras, his son was hit by a motorcycle, which nearly killed him, but I mean, he was critically injured for a very long time, and this was during the film, so Father Karras is literally going from the hospital to the set every day. That's because he's worried about his son, obviously, in super critical condition. But I feel like that did cross over into the film. With sure.
Having to see his mother in the nursing home.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then she passes away and he's not there.
Dimmy.
With all due respect.
With all due respect. No, yeah. It's a good scene, too, yeah. I mentioned before that Linda definitely had a lot of injuries, specifically to her back. One of the instances was on the bed, where she was literally thrown out of the bed because of a piece of the rigging broke, and she fell. It injured her back, and she fell over 6 feet. And this is a 12-year-old girl that you're throwing around. Linda also received a lot of death threats. And I don't know I guess religious nuts or something.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would attack Linda Blair and not the director.
Because they're nuts.
Yes, that's true.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, but think about the things that she was saying. She was saying very blasphemous things in the movie.
That's very true, yeah.
So, people just buy right into the character. They don't even think about it as a movie by that point. They're just straight up, But she said some pretty horrific things.
Yeah, right. That's true. It was interesting too because Linda. Just as a side note, Linda actually wasn't an actress. Really,
this is her first movie.
This was her first film, her first anything really acting wise. She was modeling. She would model for her mom's horse ranch. That was her real only gig in front of a camera. The reason she was picked is because her mom was in the industry previously and knew the director and just brought her in one day, and the director was just kind of like, oh, okay, like this is this super innocent little girl, that he thought could easily possess, this, the guttural voice. Nice. But yeah, they thought this girl's perfect, but it was mostly because they didn't want an actor. They were specifically because, child actors,
they can be kind of hammy.
Like a little bit, but it's because they're not, quite as developed. I mean, not to say there aren't child actors that fucking kill it these days,
Haley Joel Osment.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Or Dakota Fanning or something,
Oh, yeah.
there's a lot of but I mean, he just wanted it to be real, and she seemed really incredibly real. The director actually talked to her like a person, and was like, "Hey, do you know what this movie's about?" And she's like, "Yeah, I read the book." And he was like, "Do you know what you have? What happens in the?" And she was like, "Oh, she gets possessed, and then I think she even says, and she masturbates with a crucifix." And I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, so he was like, kind of like, okay, well, she's like adult minded to the point where she understands the material enough to, you know what I mean? Like, because I feel like you'd have to push that onto some different child actors for sure to kind of understand it. Because if you don't understand it, then yeah, that's gonna be really hard to pull it off.
Well, like with the kid in The Shining, though, Stanley Kubrick was very kind to him, and because he had his own daughter around the same age, and he did certain things to where the kid, as an adult later on, says that at the time of filming, he had no idea that The Shining was actually a horror movie at all. He had never seen it, and the scenes were filmed so cleverly that he didn't, like, he thought it was all pretend. So he would do things like, pretend to be angry. So it really depends on the director, and obviously, this director, what was his name again?
Friedkin.
Friedkin was, in my opinion, a little bit of a sociopath, but,
That's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, going back to Linda, she received tons of death threats. Yeah, like we said, for all of those reasons. But it was so bad that the studio actually had to hire bodyguards to escort her for the next 6 months.
Wow.
Because they were just so concerned about her. In 1987, actress Mercedes McCambridge, who actually played the demonic voice of Pazuzu, was the victim of a horrific tragedy when her son actually murdered his wife and children before taking his own life. And this is the woman who played the devil's voice, which is really creepy.
Oh, wow.
Did you say it was Pazuzu?
Pazuzu. Yeah, that's what I think they actually say it in the film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The name of the demon?
Yeah, it's when he discovers the statue or the...
Yeah, which Pazuzu isn't a real demon. I think it's based on the demon which is known as Zozo. I don't know.
I don't think so.
No, I'm...
Yeah?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have like the... I just don't want to like...
Zozo,
if we don't know the
Pazuzu.
reference.
Oh, no, it's just a video I watched of Richard Lales on demonology.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The only thing I've seen is like Ouija videos where they mention it. But I guess...
But, oh, no, you're right, but maybe you're right, yeah. Because that reminded me of this other story where this guy was a murderer and he called himself Pazuzu.
Oh, okay.
Which I'll maybe tell in another podcast.
That's funny. Many believe the film was cursed, obviously, and that if you played it through a projector, it was an invitation for demonic possession. So there was also this film was also The Ring, too. If you watched it, it would curse you. Televangelist Billy Graham stated, "There is a power of evil in the film, in the fabric of the film itself." That was kind of Martin Luther. That was not. I'm sorry. That was not a good.
Not bad.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I started with Billy. Don't know where I ended. When it was first released, the film was banned in every Middle Eastern country except for Lebanon.
Wow.
The re-release was banned in Lebanon, though, just in case. During the Roman premiere, audiences had to fight their way through a torrential downpour accompanied by thunder and lightning in order to get inside the theater. Many inside claimed to hear a horrific demonic cry coming from outside once the film started.
Sure.
At one showing, a woman was so frightened she passed out in the theater and broke her jaw. She later sued the filmmakers, suggesting the subliminal messages caused the accident. Warner Brothers settled out of court.
We'll give you $50 and free popcorn.
Right. And they're like, okay,
take
cool. Also, the movie was great. Yes, and so that is The Curse of the Exorcist.
Yay.
So
Wow.
don't watch it on a projector. You can watch it on a TV.
we should
but
do that,
not
though.
on a projector.
I heard Laserdisc is also haunted.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, all
If you
laser
can find
discs,
it-
though,
if you can
not
find it,
just
you
The
can get haunted.
Exorcist.
Is that
all laser
Is
discs.
that why
is
they don't
haunted.
exist anymore?
That's why they don't
Right.
exist. They had to stop it. Yeah.
A couple lawsuits in Japan about that.
So my story is The Curse of Atuk. Atuk, or The Incomparable Atuk, is a movie script that is attached to 7 deaths. Yeah, so basically almost every actor that this script was shopped to, actually every actor this script was shopped to, died before the film could ever be completed. There's only one known scene that was ever filmed.
Oh, they did actually do something.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I'll get into that. Okay, so basically the plot of Atuk, it's based off of the book The Incomparable Atuk, which was written in 1963 by Mordecai Richler. He's Canadian. I don't know. So oddly enough, there's nothing really spooky or creepy about the script itself or the story or the plot of the script. It's actually kind of like a typical 80s romantic comedy. So, in the screenplay of Atuk, which the book was adapted for film in the 1970s by Todd Carroll. It is also said that Michael O'Donoghue worked on it, as well as later on, it was adapted a little bit later, and I'll get into that, by a man named Norman Jewison.
I know that name.
Yeah. Atuk is a Inuit from Alaska, and he wants to see the world. And a woman named Michelle Ross, who is a documentarian, comes to Alaska to make a documentary about his village. He stows away in her suitcase and eventually comes to New York. While he's in New York, he's introduced to Michelle's boss, who is the villain of the story, an Alexander McEwen. So anyways, Atuk is conned into filming some commercials for Alexander McEwen, who is planning to erect a massive metropolis on top of Alaska's wilderness called the Emerald. So basically, Atuk gets wise of what's going on, and he lets his village know, and he derails the whole project, and ends up falling in love with Michelle Ross, and they move to Hawaii, and they live happily ever after. Blah blah blah. So yeah, so the story of the script, there's not anything really scary about it. So it's a comedy, and it was first finalized. The script was finalized in 1979, and the first actor who Carol, the screenwriter at the time, approached to play Atuk was John Belushi. So John Belushi was a personal friend who was invited to play Atuk from the start. And in 1981, he finally agrees to play the role. However, on March 5th, 1982, he was found lying face down on the floor of his hotel at the Chateau Marmont. After his autopsy, it was discovered that he had died of an overdose of cocaine and heroin, and he was only 33 years old. So then in 1987, United Artisans purchased the script, and they bring it to comedian Sam Kinison. Now, yeah. So it's reported that Kinison wanted a rewrite of the script, and I think this is when what's his name, Norman Jewison? Yeah, when he is brought on to rewrite the script. Sam Kinison is actually the one who filmed a scene of Atuk, and this is the only footage ever filmed of this actual movie. But because Sam Kinison was an alcoholic and had outrageous behavior on set, the film was eventually terminated. But on April 10th, 1992, so about 5 years later, Kinison and his entourage were driving on the I-95 towards Laughlin, Nevada, when a drunk driver drifts into their lane and strikes Sam Kinison and his friend's car. Kinison is able to walk out of the car, but dies shortly after. One of his friends who was there during the crash, who survived, held Kinison as he died, saying, "I don't want to die, I don't want to die." And eventually he said, "Okay, okay," and died. Kinison was 38 years old. So, most scripts do get shopped around for a while before they eventually get made, and like Pat was saying, like they'll kind of play around with the idea of a few actors and they'll bring a few in. It's just kind of odd that already two of the people attached with the script died. And we continue. In 1993, John Candy caught wind of the project and requested a copy of the script. He agrees to play the lead role, but at the time, he was in Mexico, completing what would then be his final film, Wagons East. On March 4th, 1994, while away from the set, he was on vacation. He was found in his hotel room. He had died of cardiac arrest. He was only 43. So some people believe that Michael O'Donoghue was the one that gave John Candy the script. It's also said that Michael O'Donoghue was the one that originally gave John Belushi the script in 1981. Michael O'Donoghue was said to have worked on the script in the early days, so this kind of makes sense. But on November 8th of 1994, Michael O'Donoghue dies of a brain hemorrhage at age 54. So that's that's 3 already. So in 1996, United Artisans approaches Chris Farley. Now, he agrees to do the script, or agrees to do it, but in November 1997, Chris Farley's brother checks him into the John Hancock Center in Chicago due to his drug use. If you guys don't know, Chris Farley always did drugs. He was an alcoholic, and he was very much into cocaine and heroin, which was common for comedians during the 80s and the 90s. So on December 18th, 1997, Chris Farley goes back to his apartment, accompanied by a call girl. They drank excessively and they did drugs throughout the night. At 2 a.m., he has a massive heart attack. He collapses on the floor and he's begging the call girl for help, but she refuses to help him. She doesn't do anything, and he dies. Now, he did ingest cocaine and heroin throughout the night, but upon his autopsy, they found that it was due to, okay, I can say this, atherosclerosis in his arteries, basically a buildup of his arteries. So, Chris Farley, however, before he died, while he was still planning to work on the project, had asked Phil Hartman to play the... Right?
Right, yeah. Oh my god, just digging and digging.
So, he had asked Phil Hartman to play the co-starring role of Alexander McEwen, the villain of the movie. Chris Farley and Phil Hartman had worked on SNL together. Hartman expressed interest and suggested they start working on the project in 1997, which ended up not happening because Chris Farley passed away. And this is like the worst part of the story, what happens to Phil Hartman.
Oh, this is a doozy.
Yeah. So, on May 28th, 1998, Phil Hartman had a heated argument with his wife, Bryn, due to her drug abuse and alcoholism. Hartman went to bed after the argument, and at 3 a.m., Bryn went into his bedroom and shot him 3 times while he was sleeping, point blank. He was 49. Now, Bryn ran over to the neighbor's house and confessed, and the neighbor was obviously freaked out, but went back to their house because the neighbor knew the 2 kids were at the house. So the neighbor convinces Bryn to let her take the 2 children out of the house. Phil Hartman's kids were in the house the entire time that he was shot. Now, the neighbor calls the police, obviously, and when the police arrive, Bryn shouts out, "I told you I did it, I told you I did it," and then turns the gun on herself and kills herself. So, yeah. So, 7 deaths, a murder-suicide attached to this script, and so we can all be kind of relieved to know that United Artisans requested a seizure of all the copies of the script. And it is now locked away in one of their offices, never to be made again. But there are a few copies of the script floating around. You can also buy the original book, The Incomparable Ed Took, that the film was based on. It's on Amazon. It's in my shopping cart right now for Amazon. And that is the very strange and weird story of the cursed movie script Ed Took.
Good God.
Nice.
Ugh, man, that's crazy.
So let's go down the list again. So you had you started with John Belushi. Then it went to John Candy.
Hold on. No. Belushi, then Kinison. Sam Kinison.
Oh, Sam Kinison, that's right. Then John Belushi.
Then John Candy. Then Michael O'Donoghue.
The guy who wrote the book, or wrote the screenplay?
He helped on the screenplay.
All right, wrote the screenplay.
Chris
then
Farley.
It went to Chris Farley.
Then Phil Hartman. And his wife. How many is that?
So that's 7.
7. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's funny because, when I graduated, got out of high school, I started working for my dad, and so I was working with newspapers all the time, and that was in the mid to late 90s, so all that stuff that you were talking about, I saw in the newspapers constantly because I delivered, anywhere from 8 to 10 different types of newspapers, a lot from New York and stuff. And when that murder-suicide happened, that was like huge news.
Yeah, man. Especially because
huge news. Obviously, when Farley died, that made the newspapers, of course.
Yeah.
John Candy, I was still in high school when that happened, and that was sad because, of course, he was such a big '80s staple.
Yeah.
And such a well-liked character actor,
Yeah.
So it was a lot of those stories. I even remember when Sam Kinison died because, Howard Stern and Sam Kinison, they were friends, and so I knew all about his comedy, and he had a video on MTV called he covered that song Wild Thing.
Oh my God, I forgot about
that.
that.
Remember that song Wild Thing? Wild Thing, you made me. He had what's her name? There's some very famous '80s girl that was in the video, but anyways, So a lot of those murders and suicides and deaths are very close to what I remember. But I didn't realize that they were attached to that film, so that's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, is it a cursed script or is it just a coincidence?
Right.
I mean, the fact that you had an overweight male character for the lead role didn't help.
Doesn't help. Yeah, exactly. That's another thing, and I think that was also another reason that Phil Hartman passing away was shocking too, is because no matter how it happened, you're still like, but he was so young and healthy. What I mean? Even though Chris Farley just was doing coke.
I thought that was. I don't know if you guys thought about it, but like you said, he got fired from the set for excessive drug use and drinking. And ironically, he had gone to rehab and was sober when he was killed by a drunk driver weaving into his lane.
Oh God, wow. That's crazy.
So that was pretty nuts.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's a trip.
Well, really cool story, Thea. That's a neat one. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Thank you.
That adds a little.
How did you hear about that story?
I think I heard it from like top 10 cursed movies or something like that, or I don't know. I watch so much YouTube.
It's easy to fall down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. All right.
When I first moved to LA and I was doing repairing pools and spas with my brother, that was one of the first houses I went to was Phil Hartman's old place.
Wow.
Get out.
Yeah, and apparently the guy told my brother too. He was like, "Do you want to see the bedroom?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
Wow.
like, "Are you for real, man?" Like,
Yeah.
God. It's like, is
Wow.
that why you bought this place? You
Oh.
sick fuck.
Wow.
But I guess yeah.
I knew that I knew that she had killed herself. I didn't realize that she went over to the neighbors and confessed and then came back and like yelled at.
That's crazy.
I
Yeah.
thought that the cops got there and they found both the bodies there and she was already dead.
Yeah, but I mean, thank God that she did, or else the neighbor, who knows what would have happened to the kids, you know,
Yeah,
the neighbor
I
not
knew the
getting
kids
them
were,
out.
and the kids were like probably like 8 and 11 or something like that. They were pretty
Yeah.
young, but they were old enough to know what was going on. So that's what was
Yeah.
really messed up about it.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
crazy.
All right, guys, do you want your assignments for next week?
I'm excited. What do we got?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Jameson, so these are all connected together. Maybe, well, it's a little obvious, but, so, Jameson, I want you to research and tell us about Anton LaVey.
Anton LaVey.
Yeah, I want you to
Mr.
tell us.
Satan himself.
Yep. And I want you to focus also on his celebrity connections.
Okay.
Okay. Pat,
Sounds good.
I want you to tell us about Jane Mansfield and her tragic death and the conspiracies behind her death.
I'm down with that. That's gonna be good. That's gonna be really good.
And my story, I'm just going to entitle it "The Ghost of the Pink Palace."
Ooh.
Pink Palace.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
All right.
man.
Yep.
Well, now, why did you pick that story? Because maybe what if I wanted the story about the Pink Palace?
Do you want to do "The Ghost of the Pink Palace"?
If I had known
You know
there
what,
was a
Tia?
palace that's
I'm gonna let you
pink.
have this one, okay?
Okay,
Just
good.
this once.
You
But I
know
get to
why?
do the story of
I'm literally in a pink room right now.
I
So-
know. That's why it's so perfect for you. But I get to do the story of the Purple Princess when it's done, okay?
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
All right.
The tragic death of the Purple Princess.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's gonna be some
Sparkle Lucian
gruesome-
is all
It's gonna
me.
be a really gruesome story.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for listening, everybody. Hollywood's Haunted, the podcast, is the collective work of the owners and employees of Hollywood's Haunted Tours. It is available on iHeartRadio, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, like, and share, because sharing is scaring. For more information on Hollywood's Haunted, visit our website at hollywoodshaunted.com. We'll see you guys next time. This is Jameson, Tia, and Patrick saying peace out.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks.